Okay, we're good. Can y'all stand, please? Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting that is traditionally scheduled for February 14th, but because of the holiday nature of that day, we have rescheduled to February 13th. It's approximately 5:30 p.m. We're going to start our meeting as we typically do, and that's with a prayer and a pledge. Tonight, providing our prayer is Pastor Jennifer Michael. She is from St. Timothy Lutheran Church. We appreciate you being here with us. We appreciate everything St. Timothy does for our community, and so we're going to invite you to lead us in prayer.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. I'm not originally from Hendersonville, but I know in the South here, I'm from the South, and it's very important to have these faith connections in our communities. So in my tradition, when we offer prayers, the celebrant will say, Lord, in your mercy, and then those in the assembly will then reply, hear our prayer. So I invite you to do that. Let us pray. God of wisdom, we confess that in a world with shifting politics, fraught with confusion and doubt, it is difficult to know whom to trust and follow. We give thanks for those people here whose vocation is to serve and lead, and we pray that your hand is ever on their decisions and deliberations. We entreat you to enter into this space of political discourse, soften the hearts of our leaders so that they are able to hear and understand the needs of the community of Hendersonville that they serve. Inspire in each of them a spirit of wisdom and grace that creates an environment of being our best selves and serves to return us to being a community focused on serving the widow, the orphan, the disenfranchised, and the voiceless. And we ask that you enter the hearts of every leader of government for the truest expression of the gospel message, which is God wants what is life-giving for each person, regardless of age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, or physical or mental abilities. Whatever that is, however that is expressed, help us and our government leaders make this message of life-giving hope manifest here in our community today. Lord, in your mercy,
Hear our prayer.
hear our prayer. Lord, we also know that there are people that are surrounded in our community with tragedy and heartbreak. We pray especially for the family of Annette Hunter and also for Detective Andy Harrell's family as his wife has passed this week. Rest upon them your strength and your peace, knowing that they are never alone and that you continually are there in their presence, walking with them, supporting them, and giving them strength. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Gracious God, we commend to you these prayers for our local leaders and those beyond. We commend them all to you and also entrust all of those petitions that we hold silently in our hearts to your loving care. We pray this in the name of Jesus, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Amen. Again, that was Pastor Jennifer Michael of St. Timothy Lutheran Church. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Yeah. We have Rachel Collins absent. Rachel Collins. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept our agenda. We have a motion from Alderman Waters and a second from Alderman Dixon. Let's see, Alderman Martin. I'm going to highlight Alderman Martin and ask him to speak a little bit here because we have a situation with two appointees that the typical process doesn't work. The typical process is that we have the application for the appointment in our packet for one meeting, and then we vote on that at the next meeting. So what that means is we have two nominations that he has coming forward that actually we wouldn't vote on for a month, and that's not going to work in this situation. So Alderman Martin, will you explain who they are and what their positions are?
Sure, thank you, and I apologize about having to go through this route, but I've got two nominations. One of them is Larry Farina in Ward 2, a 4-year term on the Hendersonville Beer Board, and then another one, Mr. Robert Boyce, another 4-year term on beautiful Hendersonville, also out of Ward 2.
So what his motion is that we're just notified of those tonight, and Casey's going to pass out that information. We will vote on those in 2 weeks. So, so we have a motion to add that to the agenda, and again, it's just going to be at the very end of our agenda of notification. I need a second, however. A second from Alderman Sassy. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of approving that amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. Casey's going to pass those out to us sometime sometime before the end of the meeting. So we'll have those to take home, and we can take a look at those.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that, Alderman Martin. Any other discussion, any other proposed amendments to our agenda? All those in favor of approving the agenda that was provided to you plus the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. We have no public hearing. I'm going to entertain a motion that we approve the minutes from January 24th that was provided to you in your packet. I need a motion, please. We have a motion from Alderman Goodwin, a second from Alderman Waters. Alderman Sassy. Oh, you were on.
Am I on?
Now you're
Alright, there
good.
we
Okay, go ahead.
go. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Would like to make a change to the minutes in where the candidates for Ward 1 Alderman were announced. It also includes myself in there, and so I would like to have myself removed from that.
Where is that?
That's a great question. Let me see.
It's going to be
Here it is, page 5.
page 5.
Nope,
Not page 5.
not page 5, sorry.
Alderman Robertson, did you find it?
Here we go. It is on page 6.
Page 6. Okay.
About 3/4 down.
Okay.
It says, without objection, the rules were suspended to hear from
Ah.
Bergdorf, Cox, and Jackson, and Sassy.
Okay.
You got it.
So we can cross out and Sassy. Actually, cross out the period and Sassy, and then it goes on with an allotted 5 minutes to address the board. Is that accomplish that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Robertson, I believe. Any discussion on that? Alderman Sassy, thank you for catching that. All those in favor of making that change, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously.
Mayor, I abstained because
Okay.
I was not.
Alderman Robertson abstains, so that passes 11 to 0 to 1. I think my math is correct. Any other items on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye. Those
Aye.
opposed, please say no. Alderman Robertson abstains. Thank
Yes.
you. Okay. Let's see. Citizen comments, we have nobody who signed up. Consent agenda, we see we have 3 items there. If anybody would like to pull those items off, you're welcome to do that.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Alderman Robertson, a second from Alderman Skidmore. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving second and final reading of ordinance 2021-01, second and final reading of ordinance 2023-02, and resolution 2023-02, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Thank you. I'm now going to ask, though, that we defer item 4. We're sort of waiting for Chief Bush to get here because we know there's going to be a question about one of the items in that. Keep in mind that we moved our meeting up a day. Chief Bush, if we were here tomorrow, he would have been here on time. He is headed this direction, and so what I'm going to ask is if I'm going to make a motion that we defer item 4 under ordinance and resolutions to right before adjournment. Okay, thank you. So a motion, a second, and if he shows up earlier, we might want to deal with it earlier. Any discussion on that? All in favor of moving item 4 to the point where it's just above adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Thank you for that. We will come back to that. Okay. Now we have resolution 2023-3. This is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement substituting a lessee, Vogue Towers Partners 7 LLC, with Vogue 8 LLC to an existing option and lease agreement dated August 8th, 2019. I need a motion, please. Okay, we have a motion from Alderman Robertson and a second from Alderman Waters. Any discussion on that?
It is Vogue 13.
So what was that?
Vogue 13.
Vogue. Oh, I said 8, didn't I? Okay. Vogue 13 LLC. Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2023-03, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on to item 6. This is Resolution 2023-04. This is a resolution to adopt an investment policy for the city of Hendersonville. I need a motion, please. We have a motion from Alderman Dixon, a second from Alderman Waters. Alderman Sassy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have asked for a comparison of the debt for the city as it compares to the money that we're looking at investing this, and I would move to push this back a couple weeks while they introduce that.
Okay.
Is that
Well,
do we need that?
we might be prepared to do that right now.
So we have done some analysis on the debt that we currently have. So we ran our analysis and we ran some analysis with using that money as an investment. And then we kicked that off to the folks who actually did some of those notes for us, for them to review our analysis as well to make sure we're correct, so that what we bring before the board has been verified by a third party. So that is underway. With this investment policy, at least initially, we only plan to go into a very liquid pool where we can get our cash back within a day or two. So if the board made a decision to pay off debt, it would probably go through a couple ordinances and a budget amendment. So we'd have plenty of time, even if we passed the investment policy, to pull money out of that liquid pool to pay debt down if we needed to. So there wouldn't necessarily need to be a deferment of this. It would defer interest earnings if we deferred it today, but I don't think it would hinder us having the ability to pay down debt if the board chooses to do so.
Great. Well, then, with that in mind, I remove my motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Alderman Sassy. Alderman Robertson.
On page 67, and I want to thank the staff for this very thorough policy analysis and guidelines. But under the, let's see, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth bullet, Mayor, I wonder if you would see this as a friendly amendment where it says the mayor, comma, with consultation of the chairman of the finance committee must approve all investment purchases. That would be plural. I just think that an extra set of eyes on this, the mayor will still approve it, but I would like to recommend if the chairman of the finance committee would seem that as advisable to get the to get a little more notification of the board, so we have the mayor and the finance chair. I think it's a little better accountability.
I think that's a good idea.
I second that.
Okay. So we have a motion from Alderman Robertson, a second from Alderman Sassy. Hold on here. Alderman Dixon.
I fully support that amendment.
So tell us where that's going to go again, please, Alderman Robertson.
On the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth bullet, right after the mayor, comma, with consultation of the chairman of the finance committee, comma, must approve all investment purchases. And that would be my suggested language, but I'll leave it up to the city attorney if he thinks it can be better worded. But that would be my suggestion.
I think that's acceptable.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's got it written down. Any discussion on that? I've got way too many lights going on right now. Any discussion? Any clarification? Alderman Skidmore, you have a quizzical look on your face.
Well, I was just thinking that I fully support, thank you. Well, I fully support that, but my question would be, should, in terms of investment purchases, should the board or should each, and it becomes cumbersome, and I don't even know how to address this, but if there's purchases that we all need to know about, I'm wondering whether the aldermen should know instead of just two people about the investment purchase. I don't know, but if this is, if that can be explained to me, it may be something that I may not have to look quizzical close to Valentine's Day.
Sure. So it would be staff's intention to bring an update on a quarterly basis to the finance committee, which can get reported to BOMA as well. So I think we would keep BOMA apprised on all investment activities.
All right, well, I thought so, but I wanted to make sure because I feel very comfortable in our finance chairman, my colleague on the opposite side of the aisle here, and the mayor as well. And I know that if there was a problem, she would come to us as a board and discuss it. So, and I'm sure that if the mayor thought there was a problem, he would definitely come to the board because he's done that on purchases in the past, which I do appreciate. So that was my quizzical look, Mayor, right there, thinking that magnitude.
Appreciate that, Alderman Skidmore. Alderman Dixon.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Mr. Eckenroth for the work on this and his staff, because this was well thought out. And we thought about it 2 years ago, and now it's becoming reality, and I really, really appreciate the work. And it's a very good plan, very good plan.
Thank you, Alderman Dixon. Any other discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. Now we're back on the main motion, and again, this is Resolution 2023-04. All those in favor of Resolution 2023-04 as amended, please say aye. Those opposed say no. That passed unanimously. Thank you. Would you all like to take up the mid-year budget amendment at this point as opposed to waiting to the very end? I hear it right now. Okay, so I'm gonna entertain a motion that we take up item 4 right now. We have a motion from Alderman Sassy and a second from Alderman Martin. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. That passed unanimously. Jesse, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. We actually need a motion. So I need a motion to approve first reading ordinance 2023-3. This is an ordinance amending ordinance 2022-11. That's our budget ordinance to reflect mid-year adjustments to the city's 2023 fiscal year budget. Alderman Waters moves, and we have a motion from Alderman Garza. We're going to turn it over to Jesse at this point.
Thank you, Mayor Clary. The mayor had asked me to do a presentation this evening. We've previously held a workshop, but this is televised live and open to the public. The workshop was open to the public as well, too, but just for transparency, we're basically going to duplicate the slideshow that we saw at the workshop with just a couple minor changes. But there's no amendments from what was proposed at the mid-year workshop to what's in your packet today. So what we talked about at the mid-year workshop is what is in your packet for today. So we're going to talk quickly on why we do a mid-year review. The budget serves as the city's legal document, so it gives us a limit on what we can spend. So what we're going to approve today will actually set a limit for all department heads on what we spend. The mid-year budget allows us to see the whole field, as Alderman Robertson has coined that term. It allows us to see the revenues and the expenditures at the same time. So we don't approve an expenditure without an associated revenue. It creates efficiency with staff. Instead of bringing individual budget amendments to multiple BOMA meetings, we wrap them up and do it at one time. It helps us to address unforeseen circumstances. We just had the Arctic blast come through Hendersonville, and we'll see some mid-year budget adjustments that are in here for that. So we don't always see these things when we're 12 months, 15 months before a budget, because we're preparing the budget 3-4 months before the budget year even starts. So at some points we can be 15, 16 months before that point in the budget. And this also helps us facilitate a conservative budgeting process. We held the budget pretty tight at the beginning of this year, knowing that if there were things that came up, unforeseen items, we have the mid-year budget adjustment to review those things. So it helps us kind of hold the line when we do our initial budget. We're going to just briefly touch on the budget categories we have. We're going to talk about the budget in terms of the funds. So we'll talk about the general fund. That is the bulk of all of our spending is in the general fund. We have 3 special revenue funds that we'll talk about: stormwater, drug, and state street aid. Those are dedicated for just those purposes, where the general fund can do any type of activity. And when we talk about revenues are collected essentially in one department. They don't go they don't get collected and go against the parks budget or police budget. We collect in one department for revenue. And then expenditures are done by a department as well. So each department has its own budget limit. So when we looked at revenues at this mid-year, we approached it conservatively. We focused on the existing revenue streams we have. So the investment resolution that we brought forward tonight, we expect that to make investment income this year. We did not include it in the mid-year amendment just to be conservative. But if you look at revenue projections, we have a total revenue amendment of almost $3.4 million. Largely, that's made up of an increase in sales tax between local and state. And then we have some insurance reimbursements. Those are offset by expenses, but the bulk of all the revenue amendments are sales tax. So quite a good year for sales tax, again, like it was last year. On the expenditure side of the house, public safety and infrastructure together, there's about $2.8 million in here for public safety and infrastructure between the two categories that are listed below. So the bulk of all these mid-year amendments revolve around public safety and infrastructure. Public safety equipment that's included in the mid-year amendment is the fire engine at $825,000, police vehicles and equipment at $615,000, and then on the infrastructure side of the house, we're adding $900,000 in paving. That's split between the general fund having an additional $720,000 and State Street Aid of $180,000. We'll talk about $1 million list of additional paving, and that's because this year we're under budget by $100,000. So with the addition of this $900,000, the $100,000 that we're under budget this year, we have $1 million list. There is a handout over here on the for the streets that are scheduled to be paved, and we just drove the streets and determined the streets that were in the worst condition. We put a list together that hit $1 million. So it's going to be great to be able to do that. And then the last thing under infrastructure is the cart barn. We had a structural engineer come in and look at the cart barn and say it was in need of immediate repair and replacement. So that is in the mid-year budget. So in total, the general fund expenditure amendments are $3.2 million. So less than what we have expected to come in on the revenue side of the house. So point of this is the vast majority of all the mid-year amendments going to public safety and infrastructure. This is like a summary sheet that we use to look at how the budget is doing in total. We break the budget into two categories. The top category here is the operating budget, and then the second category is the non-operating budget. Your operating budget is how you keep the lights on, your payroll, things of that nature. Your non-operating budget is these one-time things we do, like a fire station, projects that we're going to do one time. We're not going to do them every year. And then at the bottom, we combine both the operating and non-operating budget to give a total picture of what the budget looks like when you put everything together. So when we started the year in the operating budget, we were about $614,000 in the red, but with this mid-year amendment, we'll end up over $5,000 in the black on the operating side of the house. And then on non-operating, this is an anomaly because we got these one-time ARPA funds this year. It was an infusion of ARPA funds. So the non-operating budgets, I've never seen one end in a surplus. This is a first for me, but thank you, ARPA funds. And so we started the year at $705,000. It's a surplus. There's $414,000 that we're asking to pull out of that, and that's largely just the cart barn. So we'd still end the non-operating budget in a surplus of almost $300,000. So when you put both together, you can see that we started the year with a surplus of $91,000. This amendment would add $205,000 to give us almost $300,000 of surplus for this budget year. Yeah, for the mid-year budget review. We also are likely going to be eligible for these one-time ARPA funds for our stormwater fund. Sarah Locke in the Public Works Department has submitted multiple projects. Stormwater was one of the eligible categories through an ARPA category. We did not account for this in the mid-year budget because this final determination hasn't been made yet on whether these projects are eligible. We expect them to be. We expect that determination to be made relatively soon, but again, to be conservative, these are not included in the mid-year budget. and they would all fall under the stormwater revenue. But what we're anticipating getting is $4.4 million. And that $4.4 million is going to be broken up into 4 categories. $684,000 is for reimbursements from projects we've already done that are eligible. Approximately $2.3 million for the Drakes Creek Roundabout. $740,000 for Maple Roll Boulevard, some stormwater improvements over there. And then $533,000 for some miscellaneous projects and about $200,000 for admin fees. So that is, again, a great one-time infusion that those funds will go into the stormwater fund. So great job, Sarah and her team, putting that together. And we expect a determination to be made probably here in the next couple months on those funds. So looking ahead, I think what we've all seen is that expenses have seen a steep increase. We have persistent inflation. We probably have some sticky inflation that's going to be around on the wage side of the house now. I think it's still up in the 6% range, depending on which metric you use. But definitely anticipate expenses and inflation to be high for the next couple of years due to inflation. We've had some revenues adjust because of inflation. Some have not. As you know, property taxes stay flat unless we choose to move property taxes up. Sales taxes have gone up as inflation goes up and the cost of goods gets higher. We collect a percentage of that. So we have had the sales tax keeping up with revenues. The long-term sustainability of whether those sales tax revenues are going to increase, the gains that we've seen over the last 2 years, I think we would all be very hesitant to say that those are going to continue year over year. So we're just not real sure about the long-term sustainability of those revenue adjustments we've seen in sales tax. We've also talked about addressing some financial reserves. The city's in a much better financial position now than a couple of years ago. We had an increase in fund balance this year, but we also had a huge infusion of one-time ARPA funds of $6 million. So financial reserves is a topic that we've discussed, and I think the city is going to continue to look at putting some grain aside, putting some grain in some grain bins to store for some lean years. We do have some debt retirement coming up in the next couple of years. We pay for debt twice a year on most things. We have twice a year we pay debt service. In the fiscal year 23, so this year we had debt roll off of $350,000, and then in fiscal year 25 and 26 we're also retiring 2 more. I think they're short-term notes. So $100,000 is going to retire in 25, and $110,000 is going to retire in 26. But I think the larger question than those items is the capital projects that we've talked about, and how do we fund those without some type of grant associated with them. We talked about Exit 8 and how we've applied for multiple grants, but we've been denied on our grants, and how the current kind of scoring criteria for those grants does not put Hendersonville in a favorable position to win those grants. So I think that's a question that we're going to have to continue to ask ourselves and think about. How do we do these big capital projects if we don't have some type of grant funding associated with them? So I created a couple graphs that we can look at here. This graph here is just kind of like a base scenario where we took our revenues and our expenditures over the last couple of years, and we plotted them on the graph. We took fiscal year 23, which is in the middle of that graph, and we included mid-year adjustments. And then we just said, okay, we know we have some things that are coming on and coming off over the next 4 years, so then we plotted those out. So this goes up to fiscal year 27. So a couple points of interest. Fiscal year 24 on this graph, it includes additional paving just to do on an annual basis. Every contract that we've had come up that has renewed, they've not renewed. No one has renewed the contract without a new fee associated. So tipping fees is another one where we are going to have increased fees. So we included some of those fees that we anticipate in contracts. We included some athletic facility operations, maintenance, electricity, those types of things just to keep the lights on. We have pickleball in this year's budget amendment. We have inline hockey, which we built, and there's some maintenance associated with those. ADA improvements are in here. Debt retirement, so we're actually pulling that off of the expenditure side as that debt retires. Fiscal year 25, we anticipate some uptick in trash our trash contract, and then getting a traffic operations team on board to manage our new signal sync project, which we're in the works of putting together right now. And then in fiscal year 26, 27, it's just some debt that's rolling off the books. So this is kind of a baseline scenario. We just assume 3% inflation, and expenditures and revenues. We just assume they're both going to climb up at 3 years. So you see a pretty small gap between revenues and expenditures. It's good that it's not the reverse side, but this isn't including these big one-time projects that we do. So this is just the everyday keep your lights on type of activity that we do. The next slide assumes that we do some of these capital projects and without grant funding. And you can see it about between fiscal year 23 and 24, where the expenditures go up above the revenues. So the blue line is expenditures and the orange line is revenues. So you can see by fiscal year 25, the expenditures are drastically above the revenues. So what we did is we just said, hey, we know what our base scenario is. What are these one-time capital projects we've talked about? And let's plug those in on the expenditure side and assume we don't have a grant. We don't have grant funding associated with those. And what it did is it pushes our expenditures up much higher than our revenues. Yes.
Some of these projects in here, like Walton Ferry, isn't that money already put aside?
Yeah, so we looked at all of our projects and we said, hey, what we've seen every time we've gone out to bid, the fire hall was a great example where it doubled from our original projection. We just said, what do we think these projects are going to increase and what is the city's portion? So like for the Walton Ferry, that's the first one that's listed. We increased it just the portion that the city would be on the hook for.
Okay.
Anticipating like every other project, because I think the last time it was bid was 2 years ago.
Right.
I could be fuzzy on those details, but we had Public Works go through all their projects and give us anticipated cost schedules, and then we just included the city's portion of that.
Okay, that's fair.
And we may be able to pick up some grant funding or some outside revenue somewhere, but this doesn't assume that. This assumes that this would be on the city's.
I would hope that when a project's held up, for whatever reason, outside of our own, whether it's some type of environmental study or CSX or whoever the case may be, they should pay that percentage.
Yeah, so the Walton Ferry realignment's actually a state managed project, so they'll pick up their share. But
Is that 80?
Mm-hmm.
80-20? Okay.
Mm-hmm. We have to pick up our share.
Okay.
So that Drakes Creek, Stop 30, Avondale, Saundersville Road, turf for the parks fields. And then this does include 2 reserves. We've had discussions on reserves. So this includes $1 million set aside for public safety and infrastructure reserve in fiscal year 24. And then 25, you really see a big uptick. That's for Exit 8. So what we assume with Exit 8 is that we would bond $20 million, and we would have the first year contribution of, I think, $5.4 million. So we'd put some cash up front, and then the debt service is $1.6 million a year on that. So that's an assumption. It could, that could change, but that's an assumption that we plugged in here. It includes some parks, inclusive playgrounds, office relocation in 25, and then fiscal year 26, 27, Durham Farms Athletic Fields and Heritage Park, which is formerly Beatty Park.
Alderman Robertson.
Did I hear you right to say that this graph, the blue line represents reserves, the creation of reserves?
In fiscal year 24, yes, for public safety and infrastructure.
I thought that the next graph is the one that showed the reserves. I didn't know that it doesn't have it listed on the right side, reserves.
Yeah, it's the last bullet under fiscal year 24 for public safety and infrastructure. So originally when we had discussed this, we had talked about 3 reserves in the third graph, which we're going to show.
Right.
And then today I just the mayor and I got together and said, hey, which one of these items are we going to put as a higher priority item?
Okay.
And the public safety reserve was really kind of a higher priority in the infrastructure for these projects. So this does assume beginning in fiscal year 24 that just the public safety and just the infrastructure reserve would be a priority item that we would budget for.
So do we know if the board approves the expenditures for the police and fire equipment tonight? Do we know the next hit that the budget will take for a replacement of a pumper or police equipment?
We have produced a schedule, so PD would just be on an annual basis, and I think we're around a million, 1.1 on an annual basis for police cars. That's 20 vehicles, if I'm correct. I think, yeah, I think it's 20 vehicles. Yeah, 20 vehicles, and they're around 60,000, 50-some thousand a piece. So we're going to be over $1 million a year. For just on a recurring basis for police vehicles, and then the fire equipment, the replacement schedule isn't a consistent every 2 years, and that's one reason why we might propose to do a fund where we just plug money aside every year, a set amount. So whenever it comes due that a fire engine's due, we have money set aside in a fund, because we might have back-to-back years where trucks are due, and we might have,
Okay.
2 or 3 years where they're not due.
Okay. I'll have some more questions after you finish.
Okay. So the last slide we're going to go to here is it adds some additional priorities. So these are additional priority, and that is adding a rainy day or a prudent reserve at $1 million a year, and replacement of the PD in the courthouse. So this is assuming the PD in the courthouse, we would take those expenses on fiscal year 25 through 27. It would continue beyond that, but that's what the debt service would be, I think, at 1.6 million. So the point of this graph is that, in the graph below, is that, on an everyday operating basis, the city looks okay. To take on these additional capital projects and big time, one-time expenditures without a grant associated with them, they, substantially exceed the revenue that we collect. So in fiscal year 24, there's a revenue gap of 3.6 million, and then the remaining 3 years, they're about $12 million of a revenue gap if we were to take on all these projects at one time. Any questions on this graph?
Yeah, let me continue, Mayor, if I may, my line of questioning. We applied several years ago. The city was devastated by a tornado, and we applied for FEMA reimbursements. Could you give us a report, and what's the volume of reimbursements that we have requested, and what's the status?
I believe we got a check last week on those reimbursements for the tornado debris. That was December 11th.
Yes.
It was over $500,000.
Perfect. Pretty good question, wasn't it? Yeah, good.
So those also are not included in the mid-year amendment. This went to Finance Committee before we'd received that check. So again, this is part of that conservative budgeting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was 534,000, 560, even better.
Do I hear 570? I'd say go ahead and cash that check pretty quick. Thank you. That's good. That's a good report. Is it the police cars and the fire truck? Is that in the operating or non-operating budget?
Operating.
Okay. So the line that the first graph that you showed. So that includes the fire engine in the mid-year budget review, correct? And okay. If we hadn't had ARPA funds, what would we be looking at today?
Yeah, so we got a pretty rosy report when the auditors came, but we booked $6 million in a one-time revenue, and we balanced the budget this year on those ARPA funds coming in. So it was a substantial positive impact to the city that those funds are gone, so we don't have them again in the future, and we use them to balance the budget.
So let me make a statement, then I'll ask you another question, Mr. Eckenroth. I think everyone on this board agrees with me that the number one obligation and responsibility of this legislative body is budget making, is to appropriate money. And so sometimes I think I'm looking at things maybe too critically on expenditures. And I've told my wife, I said, well, maybe I shouldn't look at this as my own money. And she said, no, you should. You should look at it as your own money. in the spending of that. So I said something at the workshop that I want to say again tonight, reiterate, is that I think everyone can look at these graphs. We're going to have to do some of these projects. And so in looking at these graphs, I want to put forward a challenge to the staff to get lean and mean. I mean, as far as your budget, try to do everything you can to find efficiencies. Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to do some of these projects that I think our citizens expect us to do. So to the staff, to the department heads, please try to keep your organizations as flat as possible and as lean as possible. That will help us in going forward in meeting some of these. It appears to me that the first graph was marginally healthy for an organization. Graphs 2 and 3 were unhealthy. They're not allowed under law. We can't spend more than we take in. And the magnitude of what's facing us, I think, is going to require all of us to really scrutinize every dollar that this city spends. And again, I'm not saying that the staff is not efficient. I think the mayor and Mr. Eckenroth have done a good job in trying to keep the organization lean, but I think that we just need to double up those efforts in the future going forward. Okay, now question, Mr. Eckenroth. The police cars and the fire engine, those are the big ticket items along with paving. Will both of those projects be competitively bid to make sure that the citizens are getting the best bang for their buck?
Yeah, the fire engine we will competitively bid. The police vehicles, I think we get them on a state contract. Earlier this year? Okay. The pricing? Okay.
Good.
Because we had done 10 at the beginning of the year because we weren't sure that we could do 20, so we're adding 10 at the mid-year. They're going to honor the competitive price.
Good. So the answer is yes, we're going to competitively bid both
Yes,
of
sir.
those big ticket items to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck. Now, my question, you may be able to answer this or you may not, but if we agree, if this board votes tonight to purchase the fire engine as proposed, what will we look at in the next budget as far as personnel from the fire department? And maybe our chief needs to answer that, or if you can answer it, that's fine. But again, I'm looking for efficiencies, and so I've heard some rumors that we believe that we can staff the new fire station with existing staff. But I wanted to hear that on the record tonight.
Sure. I'll have Chief Bush come up, but while he's coming up, these are the conversations that Chief Bush and I have had, is that yes, Fire Station 7 can be staffed with existing staff. However, there's overtime that's built in to the current schedule we have allows for extremely minimal overtime. So we have some stations that have an extra person at them. So if someone takes vacation, someone gets sick, we already have an extra person staff. So we can take those extra positions. We can staff 7. What that means is that anytime someone's sick, vacation, then it'll be an overtime for station number 7. And I'll let Chief Bush expound on that.
So Mr. Eckenroth's correct. Can we go back just 1 second, hit rewind on the RFP? We certainly can do whatever you folks want us to do, and Mr. Eckenroth and the mayor. But with an RFP, we got to keep in mind that when we put that out to bid, you're going to lose the 35% savings that we could potentially get with HGAC, which is cooperative purchasing that we entered in, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And if you do a prepayment, you potentially can save anywhere from 3 to 5%. And then you got to remember also in the RFP, if this is legal, that would be a question we'd have to have with Mr. Ray. Some of these folks will come in and give you a bid, a competitive bid, but they won't have a facility close by to do any kind of work on it. And current facilities that are close to us, they won't touch it if it's under warranty. So that means if we bought one like a Rosenbauer, we may have to send that to Alabama They may send a mechanic up to do the work, but they're going to be doing the work in our fire station. So I've seen it happen. They've made mistakes. There's oil spilled in the station, hydraulic fluid, and that's a huge cleanup then that we have to incur because they make a mistake while trying to maintenance these. But any kind of body work or maintenance work, we would have to travel it to Alabama for them to do that in their shop and then travel it back. So you're putting miles on it down, wear and tear on it, and miles coming back as well. So we would just have to include that if we can in the RFP to state that we would need some kind of guarantee there's a close designated area for them to do that type work on it.
Yeah, and I understand that. I just, in the budget looks like going forward is going to be tight with these other projects. So I'm just looking, Chief Bush, for every possible way that we can, if we have to address increased revenues, that we can go to our constituents and say, we turned every stone to try to find every efficiency we can. So I know there are, how many providers build custom engines? I mean, I think I counted 5 myself.
There's at least 5.
That I looked online. to
At least
see.
5, if not
Yeah.
more.
Okay, all right.
As far as staffing goes, currently we have, if we're at full staff, we have 37 people per shift. And that's not counting the division and the battalion chief, who are excluded, so that leaves you 35 for staffing. It takes 24 right now to have minimum staffing, which is 3 people on each piece of equipment. 3 for all 6 engines and 3 for both of our trucks, so 8 times 3 is 24. So right now, we can shift some of those folks to Station 7 to provide coverage when it's ready to open up 100%. But as Mr. Eckenroth alluded to, that is potentially going to reduce vacation time off, which may create an issue at the end of the year for vacation carryover due to illnesses, injuries, childbirths, whatever we can't predict. Training opportunities, at a reduced opportunity for us to send folks to training unless we have some funding appropriated for the overtime to send people to that training. And then it'll also reduce the amount of people that we currently have on the fire ground. I'll use the apartment fire we had back in the summer. When we got dispatched to that, we had adequately staffed apparatus, which we had 4 on engine 6, 4 on truck 3, and 4 on engine 3. We had 12 people on the fire ground at that apartment complex within 3 minutes. And they stopped a huge dollar loss by having enough people to work effectively on that fire ground. So that's the reason I want folks to know it's important for us to have adequate staffing. But we can certainly staff it with current folks now. The SAFER grant is coming open again. We're certainly going to come and ask the Public Safety Committee and the board if they would allow us to seek that opportunity, because that's free for 100% again for 3 years. We certainly are going to always explore our avenues to get that if you guys and gals give us that opportunity.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mayor.
Okay, appreciate it, Alderman Robertson. Alderman Martin.
Peterson.
Hold on here.
I think they
Hold on
switched.
just a second, Lee.
They have switched seats.
That's not allowed. Alderman Peterson. You're good.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Hold on. So hold on here. I thought I had. Okay, Alderman Peterson, you should be good. Okay, there we go. Okay.
All right, thank you. Chief, I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Earlier, we were talking about getting police cars off state contract, but we can't get fire trucks on state contract. Is that correct?
That's correct, but that's kind of similar to the cooperative purchasing, the Houston, Galveston, HDAC that I make reference to, and
Right.
then there's Sourcewell that we're a membership are a part of that as well. It's very similar to what they do for state contracts.
And that cooperative agreement is almost, is probably more competitive than a state contract or formal bidding.
Yes, sir, because typically how they do those cooperative purchasing, they have to bid the builders, the manufacturers have to give a bid price for 2 to 3, 4 years. The biggest increase we got hit with this year is the EPA. And nobody has control over that. When the EPA says you're going to do something, you have no choice but to do it. And so that's the 7% increase that we just got hit from engine 7 to now what we're trying to experience with replacing engine 6.
And that's, you mentioned the RFP, is that for this pumper truck?
If you folks vote for it, and that's what Mr. Eckenroth and the board wants us to do, we can write one. But we're gonna, and Mr. Roberson's request, we're gonna go with whichever price is the best. We may invest man hours in creating an RFP, which will be pretty large. But at the end of the day, if HGAC or Sourcewell is cheaper, we're gonna go with one of those unless my boss says no. But I would say we're probably gonna go with the cheaper one.
Okay, and I can speak for the board, we appreciate that. It's not our money, it's the taxpayers, but this ultimately benefits all the taxpayers. So we appreciate you getting the best price you can.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say too, Mr. Roberson, we met, I guess, last Monday. Is that correct? I've been on vacation, sorry. That's why I look so scruffy. But we talked about it. And so one of our engines, because we do take care of them, and I think Mr. Roberson can speak to that, is they're 20-year investments. And so we do service them. We maintain their cleanliness, inside, out, exterior. And those things look great for 20 years of service. However, what happens is you start running into problems with locating parts for those 20-year-old pumpers. If a pump goes down, you may wait weeks to months before you can get a piece to put back on that pumper. And so that's what happens as they start aging out. They don't make the parts for those anymore. Not to mention the fact the safety features have changed tremendously from 1999 to current day.
Alderman Peterson, thank you. Alderman Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Bush.
Yes, ma'am.
Back in October, I believe, we talked about custom versus commercial.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you share with us a little bit about what the cost difference in that would be? Again, in the spirit of Alderman Roberson's efficiency comment, I think that we need to readdress that.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. 100%. So one of the biggest things that between a custom and a commercial, a custom, which is what we've currently bought over the last, I guess, 3 or 4 that we've bought as a city, as an organization, which we have used cooperative purchasing for those, is customs are crash tested. Commercials are not crash tested. And I think I've shown a couple of you, we've had conversations with each other about what a commercial apparatus looks like. They just crumple. They're not reinforced with steel like the customs are. They don't have airbags like the customs have. And really and truly, it's best for our staff. Thank goodness, knock on wood, because we emphasize about driving, stopping at red lights, stopping, not going over the exceeded speed limits. We've been very fortunate to have accidents. 386, as everybody can attest to in this room, when we're out on 386, it's a nightmare. And so that provides us the avenue of safety as we're responding to calls. Other distances or other differences would be a custom. You have an increased 40 foot of stopping distance. With a commercial, you do not get that. With a custom, you have larger step boards to step up in. So if you've never had turnout gear on, you're stepping up into a fire engine. Your contact points are very important to reduce injuries, slips, falls, spraining of backs, twisting knees, hurting arms, whatever that may be. With the commercials, they don't have 3 points of contact, and they're very, very small. So when you're trying to step up with a leather boot on, you really have to pay attention to what you're doing, or you potentially could fall off one. The hose beds on our custom ones, we've lowered them over the last couple of years without a great big cost change, where the commercials are really super high. We have ladders that actually put us on top of our customs. The commercials, as you're stepping up on them, they have 3 little small triangular steps in each corner. That is very hazardous in the winter and the summer with wet boots on to come up and down. You lose visibility in the windshield. You lose visibility on your side windows. Again, cancer, because of the legislation that was passed, cancer bill, we don't have the opportunity to have the cancer reductions in the commercials like we do in the customs. We're working towards implementing those without a huge cost to us right now, which keeps it's called clean cab customs. And so what we're trying to do, we make our staff decon on a fire ground. That's why they have 2 sets of turnout gear. They have to red bag it, put it in the back. They're not putting all this stuff that has carcinogens on it in the cab of the engines with them. Commercials are reduced as far as cab space. The heating and air conditioners do not work. You lose about 110 horsepower on a commercial. And then on some of these hills and some of these areas that we drive in Hendersonville right now, we've had them in the past. They barely would pull them. Matter of fact, a running joke used to be we could get out and walk beside it and get to the call quicker than going up like Free Hill Road or something with a commercial pumper. You also lose the ability for power. The electrical components on a commercial are not as stout as what they are on a custom. You would have to spend about 60 to 70,000 more dollars to raise that commercial electrical ability to a custom level. I'll be glad to keep going if you.
No, stop right there.
Yes, ma'am.
What would be the cost difference? And then
About
I'll address-
$120K.
Okay.
But you're only going to get 10 years of life out of that commercial.
Okay. So I'd like to ask Alderman Peterson. I know that he helps many communities in the state obtain pumper trucks and fire trucks. What is your opinion? I know that there are many more commercials built, and I've done some research, than custom. So, and I know they're federally regulated, and I know they're validated processes. And the reason they don't do crash tests is because they validate to a crash test and verify their processes. They're world-class facilities, so they're not going to make junk. Okay, so but I don't want to be unsafe at all. Please don't take it that way. I'd just like your opinion.
Okay, thank you. I do work with cities across the state, and these cities are low to moderate income communities that simply can't afford a fire truck. Hendersonville is blessed because we can, we can buy this truck, and we would sleep well at night.
Okay.
A lot of my communities, we're offering $400,000, $500,000 grants. And that doesn't even cover the cost of a commercial truck. And so the county has to come up with a match. So for instances like that, they have no choice but to get a commercial vehicle. And I certainly understand Chief's point about the user safety and the other aspects of a customized vehicle over commercial. And I'm just glad we have the funding to be able to afford that, because I do think in this case that if $120,000 is well worth the investment to get 10 more years, if nothing else, out of the life of a vehicle is well worth it for the city to invest in that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Brush.
Alderman Dixon, thank you. Alderman Peterson, thank you. Alderman Goodwin.
I have a question for the chief.
Yes, ma'am.
When I met with you and discussed the differences in the vehicles and the trucks, one thing that you said is the turning radius of the custom, and with all the subdivisions now, it would be
It'll be about
difficult.
10 foot longer, and the turning radius is much more difficult because the nose of a commercial is much longer than a custom. So you get into the Durham Farm subdivisions, you get into the Winston Hills subdivisions, these commercial apparatus will be very difficult to maneuver in and around vehicles. If you've got areas where they park on the street, it's going to be very cumbersome for us to get around it. It's an increased opportunity for us to have an accident, to hit a parked car, potentially for us to not be able to stop in time if a car pulls up in front of us. So the turning radius is compromised. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. For $120,000 difference, I have to go for the custom. I can't put our first responders in what is not the safest for our officers out there. I would have to go with the custom.
Okay. Alderman Goodwin, thank you. Any other questions for the chief, or then we'll go back to questions for Jesse? Alderman Robertson.
Chief, if the board tonight approves this expenditure, what will we do with the surplus fire truck? I know that our Parks Department has one of the old commercial
Yes, sir.
units. So I'm just wondering, is that an opportunity that we could deed that over to the park so they could use it in cases of an emergency of watering?
Certainly. That would be between Mr. Eckenroth and the Parks Director and myself and whoever else, but
Okay.
certainly, yes, sir, we
Because
could.
we're not going to get any money out of it, are we? If we sell it.
You might get $5,000, $50K. It just depends. The one we'd be getting rid of that the Parks has, you might be able to get $5,000 to $10K out of it.
Okay. Okay.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. Any other, Alderman Sassy?
Hey, thanks for answering all our questions,
Yes,
Chief,
sir.
today. If this is approved tonight, How long will it take before this engine goes into service?
That's a loaded question because I was sworn to secrecy by the vendor. If we get it approved, I mean, obviously, if we go out to RFP, it kind of changes all that. We could potentially have it here by October of '24. But there are folks around us that have ordered because we keep our options below 500. The way that it's explained to me when we go and do our final inspections is there's lane 1, lane 2, and lane 3. So anything under 500 options is in lane 1. Anything 500 to 750 is lane 2. 750 to 1,000 options, which can be anything, bells, whistles, whatever. We keep ours under 500 for a reason. Obviously, we're trying to keep the costs down to folks. We understand that, you know, things are getting tighter. We understand that. We just want a piece of equipment that we can rely on, that's proven to us over the years that it's going to be reliable to the people that we're sworn to protect. And we potentially could have this in our city by October of '24.
So what you're saying is there's a little sense of urgency in getting this done.
So yes, sir. So the one we currently have now is already a year into, like engine 6 right now is a year into its potential 5 years as a reserve. So the quicker we get it to go into our reserve status, the quicker you'll have a chance to kind of take a breath, potentially before you have to buy another, if that makes sense to you folks. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but it gives you an opportunity to say with our schedule that we've come out with, which I think is, again, super important that we maintain that and look at that and understand so we don't have these surprise moments that everybody feels like, how come we were not made aware of that? I feel like having a replacement schedule is super important for both fire and police, and the understanding that you folks know that we'll be coming forward in coming years on these established years to seek that replacement.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Alderman Sassy, thank you. Anything else, any other questions for our chief? Okay. Any questions for our COO? So as I made you all aware of over the weekend, I'm going to propose an amendment, and it comes with a little bit of an explanation. Since I've been mayor, and even before that, I had many people approach me about the hours of the Hendersonville Library. Hendersonville Library is a cooperative effort between the city and the county. And that includes the land, the building, and the operational expenses. The staff, they are county employees. And what the city has done for as long as I can remember, the city has contributed $50,000 toward the operations every year. And we write that check to the county, and the county uses that for the operations, including staff, including utilities, including maintenance. And we do provide some limited maintenance as well. I think 5 years ago, I talked to the board about adding $20,000 to that $50,000. The reason that I wanted to add that $20,000 was so that the library would be open on Fridays. Currently, our library is not open on Fridays. Our library is only open 40 hours a week. The Gallatin Library is open on Fridays. The Gallatin Library is open 48 hours a week. The rest of the libraries in the county are open 40 hours a week. Some, I believe, have Friday hours, some don't. But the number one concern I heard about our library was it should be open on Fridays. So the $20,000 was going to match the $20,000 plus from the county a couple years ago for the county to provide the staff that would have the library open on Fridays. That fell through a couple years ago. 2 years ago, I think I have this correct, we actually felt like we had the opportunity to try again, and the board actually appropriated $70,000 with the understanding that if the county didn't provide their $20,000 plus, we would only spend $50,000. If the county wasn't going to come through with their portion, we weren't going to spend that additional $20,000. I should say that the county actually spends more than match us because they also have benefits they have to include as well as utilities. So it's more than a 50-50 match on that. Like I said, the county did not come through with their portion of that agreement, and that's okay. I mean, they have other priorities. I totally understand that. I've continued to work on that and continued to talk to county commissioners, to library staff, to members of the county library board. The county library board is really the ones that determine the budget for the county libraries, and they've had some changes there. A couple weeks ago, one of the members of the county library board called me and said that they feel like they can move some money around so that without going back to the county commission, that they can afford their portion of Friday hours. can the city do our portion of Friday hours? That would begin that would be just the last quarter of the fiscal year, which would be April, May, and June. So prorated, that's just $5,000. So I said the timing is good because we are dealing with a mid-year budget. So the time is right to add $5,000 if that's something the board wants to do. So for $5,000 that would be spent in April, May, and June, the county would more than match that, and we would have the library open for 8 hours on Friday. I think that would be a huge asset to the city. If the county does not come through with the county library board does not come through and they decide they have other priorities, we won't spend that $5,000, and we certainly won't be on the hook anytime past the fiscal year. We're not on the hook anytime past the fiscal year anyway. However, the library board wants us to be open on Fridays forever, not just for the last quarter of the year. This would start it in the last quarter of the year and continue that. So I'm going to entertain a motion that we add $5,000 to the line item of Hendersonville Public Library. And if we do this tonight, this spreadsheet that you have, I'll bring it back to you in 2 weeks when we vote on second reading, and you will see a line in there that increases our library funding from $50,000 to $55,000 and has everything computed in there. So I'm going to make a motion that we have $5,000 to the line item at Hendersonville Public Library, and I hope somebody will second it. We have a second from Alderman Waters. So any discussion on that? I appreciate that. All those in favor of adding $5,000 to the mid-year budget amendment of money for the Hendersonville Public Library through the County Library Board, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. Thank you. Now we're back on the main motion. I think we've dispensed of everything. So the only amendments that we've made right now is just the $5,000. We've had a lot of discussion, and we certainly have the opportunity to make amendments when this comes back for second reading. So any other discussion on the mid-year budget amendment? All those in favor of ordinance 2023-3 as amended, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. That will be back to us in 2 weeks for second reading. Now we're on to other agenda items. The first one is a vote on the reappointment of Mason McGivney to the Arts Council. I need a motion. We have a motion from Alderman Sassy and a second from Alderman Bergdorf. Any discussion? All those in favor of reappointing Mason McGivney to the Arts Council, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. Now I'd like to have a motion on appointing David Mooney to the Beer Board. We have a motion from Alderman Goodwin and a second from Alderman Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor of appointing Dave Mooney to the Beer Board, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we have the appointment of Jana Garden to the city's nonprofit contributions committee. Alderman Waters makes that motion, and a second from Alderman Sassy. Let me explain real quickly. As part of the budget setting process, we have a committee that deals specifically with requests from nonprofits. That committee is made up of the chairman of the finance committee, the vice chairman of the finance committee, the chairman of the general committee, the vice chairman of the general committee, and a fifth person. I'm asking that Jana Garden be that fifth person. Alderman Waters.
Have we voted on her yet?
No.
Let's vote on her and come back to me, please.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Any discussion? And you're welcome to make other nominations. It's just that we know it can't be those four people because they already sit on there. All those in favor of appointing Jana Garden as the fifth person to the city's nonprofit contributions committee, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Alderman Waters, we're going to get to reports. Is it something that we need to do? Take it right now? Okay.
On her.
Okay.
But can you explain why we don't use the screen anymore? It's always a motion, and a vote by aye or no.
Okay.
Can we get back to using that?
So to do that, we'd have to do it electronically. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
You want to do it all the votes or some
Yes.
of them? Or?
That's what we got it for.
Okay.
That's the way I feel now. I don't know how the board feels about it.
Let's do this. Let's have a conversation, me, you, and David, in the next couple of days, and sort of figure out, and maybe Annette, and sort of figure out which ones we should do that with.
Can you give us the reason why we're not using it? Is there a reason?
Because sometimes it's unanimous and it's just easier.
Okay.
But I'm very open to it. If it's easier for y'all to see and it's easier for people in attendance to see how they voted.
I can't tell if Alderman Janet votes no or yes.
Okay.
by voice, but I can tell up here,
Okay, okay,
and I can put her on my list.
okay. Let's have a conversation the next couple days if that's okay with you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Next, we have brief committee reports. Chairman Peterson, General Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. General Committee met tonight, and we had 3 items. Ordinance 2023-04, an ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title I, Chapter 6, Standing Committees. And that was just basically to schedule a more conducive time for the meetings. And that passed 2-1 to move to BOMA. And second, we had a resolution 2306, a resolution naming the city's courtroom the Curtis M. Lincoln Courtroom. That passed with all 3 votes, and that is moving on to BOMA as well. And our third item was resolution 2023-07, a resolution adopting a 401k plan for city employees, and that passed unanimously, and that is moving on to BOMA as well. That is my general committee report.
Alderman Waters, did you have a question for the chairman? Okay, thank you. There we go. Thank you, Chairman Peterson. Chairman Goodwin, Public Safety.
Not had a meeting. We have one on the 28th,
Okay, thank you. What time is it?
5:15.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Martin, Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. So we had a brief meeting this week. The consent on the consent agenda was the Liberty Federal Credit Union on 284 Indian Lake Boulevard. That was approved. We had a final plat, Fountain Brook Phase 2, Section 3. That was approved. And then we had an assisted living project. I think that's been through the system before and has gotten strong reactions both ways. This one, this revised submittal was the same number of living units, just a little bit smaller. They deleted the parking garage that was underneath the building and moved those parking spaces to the site. And then they reduced the amenity spaces to kind of tighten up the building. Those changes were approved at the staff level. The issues for voting for the planning commission was actually just whether or not it could have a pool or whether they could delete the pool, and also whether a existing garage building on the site needed to be demolished. We approved those, so that project was approved to proceed. And then we had planning director comments. Let's see, we've got the subdivision regulations. We had some edits made to those. Those are going to be presented on March 7th for approval at the next planning commission meeting. He noted that development planning meetings has slowed from about four meetings a week to about 2. So we're seeing a downtick in activity. No one yet knows what's going on with the MAPCO, but whenever they do, we'll be the first to let you know. And then the Westlake plan came up. The city put together a question and answer package, and I think they've sent it out to everybody. But there's a lot of good information in there. Let's see. They made some distinctions between the document of what it is and how it's going to be interpreted by the Planning Commission and how it could be interpreted by BOMA. They had a lot of information, so if you didn't get a chance to see it, pull up the YouTube video. There's a lot of good stuff that was discussed. And then I did want to share, Commissioner John Evans noted that there's going to be a public hearing to discuss the Westlake plan, and it's going to be an opportunity for people to show up, to attend, to ask questions, and for those that are planning to attend, take a look at the questions and answers and come informed and participate.
When is that?
That's gonna be,
The one in March.
Except March-
yeah, so March, I think, I lost the invitation card. Here it is. It's gonna be Tuesday, March 7th at 6:30, and then it's gonna be here. There's some mailers that went out. If you didn't get one, contact me. I'll be more than happy to send you guys information.
Planning Commission meeting?
Hold on one second. Alderman Robertson.
I'm sorry. Is that at the Planning Commission meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Alderman Waters.
Assisted living, when does that come before Boma?
It doesn't.
It does not?
So the zoning has been there for probably 40 years. This is just a site plan. Site plans just go to planning commission.
You mean the final decision won't be made by us?
So the final decision was made by the city commission probably 1970s. And so the site plan just makes sure that the staff makes sure that everything complies with the zoning, and then the planning commission votes on any changes that still are within the zoning. I should let you answer that, Michael. Sorry.
So, yeah, it was a by right application. They met the criteria under the code, so the plan was approved at staff level, and we were just looking
I've
at the
had so
pool.
many calls since this come back to light about that project, and I was under an impression, and I guess I've just misled some people, because I thought it would come before Boma. Because not only am I upset about it, I've got about 10 or 15 residents on that location that's upset. But we don't have a say-so, huh?
You do it, or you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean,
So the say-so came
I'm
long
happy
ago
about it
when
either.
it was rezoned for essentially assisted living as well as many other uses.
I
In
remember
order for the city to remove that, we'd probably have to compensate the property owners.
I remember, I know what you're talking about, but I just thought it was coming for us, because,
Yeah.
well,
Good, good news is it's not the high-rise apartments. It's assisted living.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
I know, and I had a lot of questions about it.
Okay.
But I won't have that changed now, will I?
Not in front of the board. Alderman Sass, did you have a question for Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir. Back to the Westlake meeting in March. Will there be a chance for citizens to speak, or is it just an informational meeting?
there will be a public hearing on this one. So everybody that shows up will get a chance to speak and share their thoughts. And I'm hoping there'll be a opportunity to have a back and forth with questions and answers from Keith Free.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Sassy. Alderman Skidmore.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate, first of all, my colleague from Ward 6 was asking about those questions, but that, believe it or not, that whole property down there was rezoned along with a lot of other additional properties way back in the day, even before my time. You can believe that one. So there was really nothing that the city could do about it. They could enforce what was already zoned and be a little more restrictive. And I have to say they did that with that. So, but I know what you mean because I'm the same way. Very protective of that area. But my next question is on the public hearing for Westlake that's on March 7th at 6:30. Is there going to be a vote by the planning commission that night to approve or disapprove that Westlake?
Great question. So no, there's not going to be a vote that day. What there will be is an opportunity for planning commission members to request changes. So I think, attending the hearing, sharing your thoughts, and letting the commissioners know things you might want to have adjusted or not, I think that'd be the best opportunity for it. It won't be voted on until at least, I think, two sessions, maybe three, of opportunities for it to be continuously adjusted.
Alderman Skidmore, anything else?
Yes, and then just one final thought. Then after, just for the record, so I'll know, because I have an idea, I had whether it was a blessing or a curse, I had the opportunity to be on the planning commission too, and believe you me, those decisions were hard ones to make sometimes. But then after the planning commission's vote, whether it's if it's voted up, then it comes to the board of mayor and aldermen to vote on for approval.
Nope.
After that, or does it, or do you, or is that it for the Westlake development?
So, one of the distinctions that Keith Free and his staff made was that the Westlake Plan is a future land use and framework plan. It's not a zoning change document per se, so it's not something that BOMA would vote on to take action. So, it could be considered a report. It's just a suggestion on future rezonings, and you know, if those zoning revisions are enacted or passed, those would have to go through BOMA. So right now, it's just a kind of a guideline, a guidepost for what the city wants to do. But that's a great question.
Thank you.
Alderman Skidmore, thank
Thank
you. Alderman Garza.
Yeah, just a point, Michael, thank you so much for that. I sat through most of the meetings early on in the Westlake program, and I'm hoping, and if you can add this to the possibility that whoever answers the questions from the citizens and or from us has a local vibe that understands what's going on in the city. I think the company that we hired did a good job. They know so little about the city, because our people who are going to be asking us the questions are referring to their neighborhoods, they're referring to their streets. And so all this fancy-wancy stuff that goes on with all these things, there's high rises, there's going to be this and that and the other, is kind of irrelevant. This is just a plan, but I hope that whoever presents this plan, whether it's one or more people, do it from the standpoint of they're talking to fellow citizens, not just the company outside. That's all I had.
Thank you, Alderman Garza. Anything else, Alderman Martin?
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct, and the plan has received a lot of scrutiny for reasons just like that. We look at the plan and look for relief, something that says, "Hey, we understand that we've got a population growth and that we've got buildings going on, but there are areas that have been suffering, and we're hoping that." Changing the zoning to reduce some of that, including hotels, reducing those, is something that it's going to, serve Hendersonville. So I think the Kimberly Horn has taken it so far, and when they present it in March, that'll be our opportunity to take it, closer to where we want to go.
Alderman Garza, anything else?
No, was that the original group that did the original presentation?
Yeah, so it's Kimberly Horn. They're a huge national planning firm.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would like to have seen a local team do it, but
In my opinion, I know they're professional, but they're also national. I think we need someone local, someone who lives here, someone who eats here, someone whose kids go to school here, for this to make sense to a lot of our constituents.
I agree with you 100%.
Alderman Garza, thank you. Alderman Robertson.
Yeah, I asked our city attorney about what kind of authority that we have on the final decision, and he echoed Alderman Martin. What you said is that BOMA will not have a vote, but I understand, Mayor, that you still want this to come. So can you outline, come to BOMA for maybe discussion? So can you explain kind of your vision on how we move forward on this plan?
So it's similar to what Alderman Martin said, is that it will come to us as a report. And
Okay.
but so when the planning commission approves this, nothing is rezoned.
Right.
Nothing. There's no approvals other than what the property is right now. If it were rezoning, it has to come to us, go through our committee process, and pass 2 readings. So in the future, when somebody looks at that plan and says, "Okay, I want to rezone according to that plan," that would have to come to us. The rezoning process would.
Okay. So I hope I'm doing the right thing here, but I want to share with Alderman Martin my thoughts on the plan, since it's not going to come to us. So maybe you could share with the other board. I think that the adage that those that fail to plan to fail. So I believe in a plan. I believe that we need a plan for this area. And I know that it is a reduction in density from what exists today, but I do not think it goes far enough on reducing density. So I would like for you to share with the board my personal thought that I'd like for you to take a hard pencil to what the consultants have done and to reduce further at every opportunity the density that has been presented to the city. So I hope that's appropriate, but I wanted to make that for the record and to share it with Alderman Martin. Thank you.
I look forward to sharing that with them.
Alderman Robertson, Alderman Martin, thank you. Alderman Martin, thank you for your report. Time for our COO report. Jesse.
I'll keep this very brief. I have some good news and bad news. Good news is that we hired an assistant city attorney, or I'm sorry, an assistant city engineer.
Good to know you, Ray. That was fast.
We'll talk about that later. Bad news is we're breaking our streak from hiring people from California. He's a native here to Tennessee, graduated from UT. So Trey Lavender, new assistant city engineer, is on board this week. So if you're around, stop by, say hi to him. He's here. So Trey, if you're watching, congratulations. If you're not, you should be watching. But that concludes my report. Thank you.
Alderman Robertson.
I'm sorry. And I'm glad the chief is here. Mr. Ray, I need your, Lance, I need your advice. I would like to discuss something that I may not be able to, so I need you to tell me. I'd like to discuss in the broadest terms possible the terrible situation that happened on Cole Court this past week.
Well, I guess we could consider that part of our COO's report, so we can go ahead.
So I know Mr. Waters and I have had at least one constituent call that lives on Cole Court. And evidently this location has had multiple police visits. Again, advise me to be quiet, city attorney, if I'm going too far. But I would like for the staff, and I know the mayor is maybe exploring this as well, that what we can do to permanently address this evidently chronic crime situation at this location. And maybe that's all I need to say, but I would like for us to explore that.
That's good enough.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Peterson, do you have a question for our COO? I do. Hold on here. Sorry, I'm not ready for you. There we go.
Jesse, this isn't about MAPCO, but I'd like to know the status of Costco.
Yeah, so Costco, we were in contact with them. We have an employee here who's assigned to be the contact, Jay Ritterbeck, who's economic and community development planner. He's in contact with them on a weekly basis. What we've heard is that they still fully plan to come here, that we've got no indication that they're not, and that they're just working through some reviews with FEMA, and they're going to break ground as soon as possible.
Okay. And also, haven't heard anything lately. When do we anticipate widening of Vietnam Veterans Parkway?
It's probably a me. I'm going to hijack your report here for a second. So I had a meeting that included the Commissioner of Transportation about 2 weeks ago. They are still on board with an aggressive schedule of possible construction starting in calendar year 2024. The reason that they feel that they're confident that it can happen is because they have considered this project as one of a few projects where the state is going to go through a design bid process. Instead of bidding out the design and having one company do that, tweaking that and dealing with, and picking the construction company, tweaking that, having it designed, and then following up with bidding it out for construction, they're going to do all that at one time, which is not something the state has done in the past. I believe they did that for one project last year, but they're they are targeting a handful of projects in 2024 for that, including Vietnam Veterans Boulevard. So we could see construction begin then. The first section that will be under construction will be the bridge, getting from Vietnam Veterans Boulevard to I-65.
Okay, and I have one more question, probably for both of you. In one of the budget graphs, the new police department and courthouse is listed. Do we have any idea how much that's going to cost? And where do we get the funding, and what's the timeline for that?
So we don't have a timeline established. That is just looking in the future to say, you know, what are needs coming up in the future. What I did is I plugged $20 million in, and I used the same funding scenario as Exit 8. So that was conservatively $1.6 million a year on debt service.
Will a grant cover that?
I certainly would want to look for grants. The graph that I showed assumed that it did not.
Okay.
And the 20 million was just from conversations we've had with agencies who have recently done police stations, and through an architectural firm that we've contacted with on their experience with those costs on those types of projects.
Do we have city property available for that new building, or would that go where it is currently located?
Yeah, we don't have a spot that's specifically designated, but it could be, you know, a rebuild of what we currently have at the current location, or it could go somewhere else, but we don't have a spot that we've identified for that specifically.
Okay, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman Peterson, thank you. Alderman Sassy, a question for Jesse?
Yeah, do you have a update on the joint City of Hendersonville, City of Gallatin, and Sumner County project over at the ice rink, the new hockey rink that's supposed to be installed there?
I haven't heard anything recently. Mayor Clary, have you? I can reach out, and if I get some information, I can just shoot an email to Bowman and keep you guys informed, but I haven't heard anything recently.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Appreciate it, Alderman Sassy. Alderman Skidmore.
Oh, sorry. I meant to take myself out. I was just going to tell Alderman Peterson and the other aldermen that exactly what you said about Vietnam Veterans Boulevard. I've had the opportunity to speak with some of the legislators down in Nashville and some of our leaders, our state leaders, and you are exactly right. They've said the same thing to you as they have said to me about the process in 24 of what they're going to do, and let's just see if it works out. But that's what they're saying. They've told me the same way. Thank you. I didn't mean to.
Alderman Skidmore, before you turn off your microphone,
mhm.
could you make a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion from Alderman Skidmore, a second from Alderman Dixon. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. We're adjourned. Thank you all.